He walked into the hotel he had built with his own hands, expecting nothing more than a quiet night, but the moment he reached the front desk, everything changed. Faces turned cold, words cut deeper than he imagined. "You can't stay here," denied in the place he owned, humiliated in front of strangers. He froze, heart pounding. How could this happen in a world that promised fairness? And yet, this was only the beginning. What would he do when the people who doubted him realized just who he really was? Before that night, Marcus lived a life most could only dream of: a devoted single dad. He poured his heart into raising his daughter while running a small chain of hotels he had built from the ground up. Long hours, endless calls, and sleepless nights were part of the routine, but he loved every second, because it was all for her. Evenings were simple: cooking dinner, reading bedtime stories, sharing laughs that echoed through their tiny apartment. His hotels weren't just businesses, they were his legacy, proof that hard work and honesty could build something real. Yet, no amount of success could shield him from the world's hidden biases. That ordinary night, one he expected to be routine, would soon reveal just how fragile respect and fairness could be. How could someone who owned it all be treated like he owned nothing at all? Marcus stepped up to the front desk, confident and calm. This was his hotel, the one he had built from scratch, where he knew every employee and every guest personally. But the woman behind the counter looked at him with a cold, unreadable expression, her fingers hovering over the keyboard like she wasn't sure he belonged here. "I'm sorry, sir, but we can't accommodate you tonight," she said, her voice polite but firm. Marcus blinked, confused. "Excuse me." He glanced around, noticing the whispers, the stares of other guests who seemed to sense the tension before he did. A pang of disbelief hit him. Denied at the hotel he owned? It didn't make sense. "There must be some mistake," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. But the manager appeared, shaking his head, repeating the same words, their eyes barely meeting his. Marcus felt a tight knot form in his chest, a mixture of anger and humiliation. As he stood there, stunned, he realized it wasn't a mistake, it was intentional. The reason wasn't openly said, but the subtle cues, the hesitant smiles, and the uneasy glances of the staff made it clear. People like him, successful, black, single fathers, were still treated as outsiders, even in their own spaces. The injustice burned like fire in his veins. He wanted to lash out, to demand respect, but he needed a plan. He couldn't let anger make him vulnerable. Marcus took a step back, assessing the situation. Cameras in the lobby caught every moment, other guests were whispering, some filming on their phones. Every second the confrontation dragged on, the humiliation deepened. He remembered the countless stories he had heard of people being dismissed, belittled, or treated as if their presence was a crime. But this was personal. His own creation, his own empire, had turned against him, not through physical force, but through prejudice, subtle yet devastating. The tension escalated as the manager tried to insist, "Sir, there's nothing I can do." Marcus felt a surge of determination. He wasn't going to leave quietly, and he wasn't going to beg for what was already rightfully his. Every fiber of his being demanded a response, a way to turn the tables and make them realize who he really was. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, a guest's voice cut through the tension, loud and accusatory, "Sir, you need to leave." The lobby froze. The moment hung in the air, thick with anticipation. Marcus's mind raced. Would he walk away and lose everything he had built, or would he finally show them that denying him wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a mistake they would never forget? Marcus took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm, though his heart pounded like a drum. The whispers in the lobby had grown louder, phones were raised, recording every moment. The manager's eyes flicked nervously to the cameras, to the growing crowd, but still refused to meet Marcus's gaze. "You can't stay here," the manager repeated, voice firmer this time, as if repetition could erase the truth. Anger surged, raw and uncontainable. This wasn't just a rejection, it was a challenge, a statement that his success, his hard work, and his presence meant nothing to them. Every insult, every glance, every subtle act of exclusion burned like fire. He felt the weight of centuries of injustice pressing down on him in that hotel lobby, the history of people like him being denied, dismissed, and erased. But Marcus wasn't just any man, he was a father, a creator, a fighter. He stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tension. "This is my hotel. I built it. I've worked for decades to make this a place of respect and dignity, and I will not be turned away." Silence fell. Guests froze, staff shifted nervously, and even the manager's hand trembled over the phone. He was about to call security. The moment hung suspended, heavy with possibility. Would they finally see him for who he truly was, or would they cling to prejudice, trying to force him out? Marcus's gaze swept the room, faces full of surprise, some ashamed, some defensive. Then, a subtle shift, the staff hesitated, their certainty faltering, and in that split second, Marcus realized that he had the power to reclaim control, to expose the injustice not with rage, but with undeniable presence and authority. The tension reached its peak. Every eye in the lobby was on him. Marcus's chest rose and fell rapidly, his pulse hammering. This was more than a denied room, it was a reckoning. How he responded now would not only define this moment, it would send a message that reverberated far beyond these walls. Marcus didn't raise his voice, he didn't lash out. Instead, he stood tall, letting the truth of his presence speak louder than any argument. Slowly, the staff stepped aside, and the manager, unable to ignore the glaring injustice any longer, nodded in reluctant acknowledgement. Marcus walked past them, each step reclaiming the dignity that had been denied to him. Guests whispered, some ashamed, some inspired, but one thing was clear. The hotel was his, as it always had been. That night, Marcus sat in his office, heart still racing but mind clear. The humiliation he had endured would linger, a reminder of the bias that still permeates even the spaces we think are safe. Yet, the victory wasn't just personal, it was a statement. Every act of prejudice he faced, every subtle barrier, could be challenged. Change began when courage met injustice head-on. This was more than one man's fight, it reflected a reality millions know too well. The quiet, insidious ways discrimination shows up in everyday life, even in places built for success and respect. Marcus's story is a mirror, asking all of us to confront uncomfortable truths, to recognize bias when it hides behind rules, titles, or assumptions. As he looked out over the lobby, Marcus understood something essential. The fight against injustice doesn't always need loud protests or viral headlines. Sometimes, it starts with claiming what is rightfully yours, standing firm, and letting integrity and resilience speak for themselves. So the question remains, how many more people are silently denied, dismissed, or underestimated every day, and what will it take for the world to truly see them? Marcus's story reminds us, change begins with courage, and courage often starts with one person refusing to step aside.